Hello everybody, JGC Anime here, and today we are going to be doing a review on Demon Slayer, an anime that people have claimed to be one of the biggest, heavy battle shonen-like animes to ever exist, animated by one of the most, talented companies to ever exist. And today, after finishing the anime and the movie, I'll be giving my thoughts on the anime in this video, and then we'll make a other video for the movie, since I feel like they should have their own two separate, videos, since I don't think people really like if I just clump them all into one. But yeah, so let's just hop right into this. So, what's the story about Demon Slayer? It's a story about a kid who, after his family was murdered and his sister was turned into a demon, he now sought for a way to turn his sister back from being a demon and went on this whole quest to train himself to become a thing called a Demon Slayer so he could fight off and defeat demons and as I said before, find a way to cure his sister of being a demon. As his sister is one of the only few tame demons that is able to hold in her craving for human flesh. So that's basically the story without spoiling too much, and so let's just go into what I like and dislike. So, things I like. For one, I love the action scenes, for the most part. By love, I mean love is a hint stronger than what I mean. I enjoyed the action scenes. I found them to be really interesting, with some unique personality to each fight that I could really appreciate. And I was looking forward to seeing what some of the fights had in store, but the only downside is a lot of the fights didn't really have me gawking at the mouth going holy crap, this is awesome! Most of them just had me thinking, this is pretty cool. It's just this weird personality thing where it's really hard to get me riled up about action. The only time I've ever had that happen to me was probably in the Sword Art Online franchise, since every action scene was so intensely interesting. But that was back when I first started watching anime, so I have a lot more of a balanced palette now of how I rate my action. And all in all, it was good action. It just didn't have my eyes wide reaction where if I'm super serious about action, I'll go a little eyes wide holy crap, this is awesome! And I get all super hyped for what's happening in the fight. I think that only happened once throughout the entire anime. And I think it was during one fight where after the main character got beaten down by something, another super OP character shows up, and I'm not trying to spoil as much as I can, but those who watch the anime will know what I'm talking about. But it's this super awesome moment where he just does all these awesome moves that take out the demons instantly, and it's so cool. But other than that, most of the series just had me think it was entertaining. One of the things I definitely have to dislike is, for one, its ending. The way it ended, while kind of felt good since it's set up for the movie, it also felt somewhat abrupt. I know they were setting everything in place for the movie, but it still felt like they were just rushing things along at the very end, where I thought characters would grow and change throughout the last little bit of it. They just kind of leave. There's not really much development with the other characters other than what they gave last minute. And I don't know why, I just didn't really care about those characters, as we barely got to know more than what we needed to about them. One character was a slave, and the way she decides things on the flip of the coin, like Two-Face. And I thought that was interesting, but kind of just go into that one little bit, and then Tanjiro, that's the name of the main character, he just pops up and goes, look, I'm gonna help you! I get that's in his nature, but it still's kind of awkward for these characters to suddenly be so close, I guess. It just felt very off. Another thing I definitely have to dislike is kind of the story. I don't mind it, but for how much people hyped up this show, it was oddly disappointing in a way. It wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't as epic and insane as I imagined. The story was fine. It didn't really take you anywhere, and if it wasn't for the action scenes, this series probably wouldn't be that well known. I know that may sound like a stupid excuse, but it's kind of true, because without the action, this series is kind of dull. I can go into more about that in the spoiler section of this review, but I just found a lot of the storytelling and some of the characters. I especially hate the Lightning Swordsman. I'm just calling him that because I really don't like his actual name. It's not bad. It's not a bad name. I just don't want to remember his name right now because I freaking hate the guy. He's so annoying. And also there's Inosuke, a guy who is like this awesome pig-faced guy who just happens to have like the face of a woman, and he's my favorite character in the entire show, and not just because he's voiced by Bryce Papenbrook, my favorite English dubbing voice actor, because yes, I watched the dub. It was a weird thing where I definitely liked Inosuke and Tanjiro, and thought Nezuko was adorable despite the fact she really that's another thing I didn't get, how Nezuko is so like overhyped up, and Nezuko's the sister. This is also a demon. She's overhyped up in the fan base being like, oh, she's so adorable, she's so awesome and stuff, and she's like barely in the anime. She's kind of there, but at the same time not, and it's definitely a disliked feature where I like her character a lot, but she barely gets any screen time. It's mostly about Chandro, and it really lacks any interesting takes since that's all we really get to see. But I guess I can kind of just give you some spoiler-free thoughts, and exactly what I just said. I thought it was fine. From what I've seen so far in the series, unless a season 2 comes along, then I really don't see how this series could be it's like as big as people say it is. But I guess I could talk about again more about that in the spoiler section. But overall, I thought this whole story was weak. The action was pretty good. The characters were decently good for the most part. Still hate the Lightning Swordsman since the only time he's cool is like in the very bare minimum, and that's what makes his character so annoying. And yeah. Well, I'm just gonna dive into the spoiler section now since there's no way I can talk about this without spoiling stuff, so yeah. Here's a timestamp to when the spoiler section ends, and if you want to stick around for the spoilers, then I'd recommend sticking around for the spoilers. But if you don't have to. In the conclusion, we'll kind of just go over my final thoughts, although the spoiler section kind of adds stuff to it. But anyway, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, I definitely think one of the things I liked about the show, as I mentioned before, was the action. But there was also this thing that I kept hearing from a lot of people about how awesome one of the fights in like the later episodes is. And I can't remember if they said it was like episode 18 or 19. But I watched both, and both had okay fight scenes. It was fine. It was fine. It just... I really didn't care about the fight scenes. When I watch anime, I watch it for the storytelling. The action's a nice bonus. Believe me, I really liked a lot of the fighting in shows like Fairy Tail, My Hero Academia, Sword Art Online. I think that fighting's awesome, but there's gotta be character behind it too. One of the main reasons I really disliked the My Hero Academia movie was because it was mostly action with a very weak plot to strand it together. That's one of the many reasons I disliked that movie. And that's kind of what this show is. They basically just take the bare minimum storytelling that sounds interesting on paper, but then just kind of relies heavily on the fights to do it. Again, I think the fights are amazing, but in terms of like how much they rely on them quite a bit, ruining the whole aspect of the plot. Like, even though I absolutely hate the Lightning Swordsman, that's, again, I'm gonna call him, I guess I don't want to say his name because I don't want to remember his name. He probably has the most interesting plot points, where in one part he was nearly turned into a spider, which I thought was kind of creepy but cool, but then it just kind of cuts away. He's like barely in it, which I don't mind because I really hate his character, but it was probably the most interesting plot point we got. And in all honesty, if it wasn't for Inosuke being there, being the absolutely most hilarious character in the entire cast, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed this anime as much as I did. I really didn't care for Tanjiro. I thought Nezuko was nice, but she was barely in it, so it kind of ruined the whole aspect of her character. And just the whole setup was both interesting and not interesting at the same time. Like how it could have just ended at the spider forest, and it's the final demons. Like, they finally faced the final few demons, which were all like spider people, which I thought was really cool to end up on. I think that was an okay conclusion. But then they just keep going. And then, the Demon Slayer meets all these people who are important and yada, yada, yada. In the end, it eventually leads him to go to another place to train. Then after that, he goes off to an actual train at the very end of the season to meet up with one of the legendary Demon Slayers who he met while being dragged there with Nezuko and his friends. And I'll be honest, I really wish it didn't keep going. The spider thing was enough, and I was perfectly okay with where that ended, but it just kept going and going and going and going, and it just wouldn't stop going. It really just felt dragged on. Maybe it's just my personal opinion, but I don't see the hype around Demon Slayer. It's fine. It's an okay show. Why people love it, I have no idea. But to be fair, this is coming from a guy who can't stand Naruto, has never even taken the time to watch Dragon Ball Z, and the only animes he's watched that are long running are probably Fairy Tail, which he hasn't even finished, and Hunter x Hunter, which I still have to finish one movie from that. But I've seen the rest of it and it was really good. Which I'll go to that in its review. But all in all, I just think that this really was an unnecessary series. It's not like groundbreaking in any way. The story, it could be interesting, but then they just kind of drag on to story that I just can't get into. Like the guy who had like the moving wall banjo things or bongos, like those things that he hit on his arms and chest and stuff that move the rooms around. It was kind of interesting, but at the same time, because they took so much time explaining it and trying to explain his backstory, not as much of his backstory, but like, I just didn't care about the fights because they just took so much time to get everything moving, and then when they did start moving, that wasn't as cool. For one, I actually didn't mind the backstories of the demons. I thought that was kind of interesting, seeing like backstories for all these demons and how Tanjiro would try to reach out to them and calm them afterwards. But just, I don't know, it just, the whole concept of the series lacked any edge to it that I could see. All I heard was that it was popular and people said it was good. So I sat down, thought, okay, might as well give this show a shot. And I did, and I didn't really care. In fact, I lost interest almost immediately. And I ended up taking a break after like 5 episodes and just not coming back to it for almost a month. And then finally sitting down and watching up to episode 15 before waiting like another 3 months before finally sitting down and watching the rest. And by the rest, I mean up to like episode 22 before I waited another month and then finished the anime to the end. I just took so much time to get through it because I just did not care. It was just oddly unsatisfying. It was just disappointing. Oddly disappointing. That's all I can really say because even though the stories had stuff that could be really interesting, it's just not as good as it could be, and I just didn't care. The people who animated it, of course, did an awesome job, and I thought a lot of the action scenes were brilliantly animated. But all in all, it just was kind of disappointing. So we're at the conclusion, and I have this to say. The anime, as I mentioned during the spoiler section, is oddly disappointing. It doesn't really have anything that really spoke to me as a person. I really did not care at all about the main character because everything's kind of sped through, like how there's a training arc that lasts a single episode, which I'm sure that was a spoilerish thing, but I don't really think it's that important since, again, it's only like 1 episode. All in all, the show sometimes paces itself too fast and sometimes paces itself too slow, and it just kind of drags on from time to time, and overall, I don't see the hype around this anime. It was okay at best, and honestly, it was probably on the same level I enjoyed like My Hero Academia Season 1. Which is saying I thought it was okay, but could have been better. And that's why I probably rate this anime a 7 out of 10. It was fine, it was okay, but it really did not speak to me at all. I just did not care. Even though it had the legend Bryce Papenbrook in it, voicing a character, and he did a phenomenal job, I did not care. I did not really like this anime at all, and I could go by without watching Season 2. And that's all I can really say. Sorry to Demon Slayer fans if that was disappointing, but that's just my personal opinion. And yeah, I thank everyone for listening to my review, and I hope this didn't offend some people because I have different thoughts. But anyway, thank you all for listening, and I shall see you all around. Peace.